guest podcast, and today it's May 13th. We're out here on Lake Ontario, actually trolling right now. We're in about 150 feet off Bronte Harbor, and today we're targeting lake trout for our guest Sarah Larocque.
Hey Nick, thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure having you on board. I mean, if you guys could hear in the background, Emily, Sarah's assistant's actually reeling in a lake trout right now, and it's about 400 out in the Dipsy. So I think we have some time here to possibly cover some topics while she's bringing it in.
Before her arms get tired.
So I guess we should officially introduce you, but, you know, from a standpoint of when we met, it was about 7 or 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. And
about 2016, I think.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, we didn't know what to expect from each other as we came from two different sides of the fishery. But, well, you go ahead. You introduce yourself, kind of where you were back then to where we are now, and kind of the stuff we've covered over then.
Yeah, sure. So when I first met Nick, I was actually helping Dr. Graham Raby. He was tagging, I think, lake trout as well, but a couple other species. And that was when I was a new fledgling PhD at Aaron Fisk's lab in University of Windsor. So that kind of brought me on board with how anglers and charter fishers like Nick here can help out with on the academic or science side of things to like help us catch our species of interest, and then we can tag them or do any other sort of surveys or sampling from them and sort of release them and get information that way. And so since then, I've also worked with Nick almost on a yearly basis, tagging, usually using acoustic telemetry tags, and we can explain that later, but tagging these fish and releasing them in Lake Ontario to get a better idea of their spatial movements and other aspects of their lives. So we kind of go back a ways, but I keep coming back, so I guess it's kind of nice to hang out with you.
No, we always welcome the invite, as you know, I briefly touched on it then. I think when Aaron Fisk approached us to help catch the salmon for your guys' tagging efforts, I really didn't know what to expect, to be honest. You know, I've always had an interest in the science, but just didn't have any knowledge on it. You know, we're about catching fish and putting our clients fish in the box for them. But I think it opened my eyes to a lot more of how the fishery works. And I think those are the few things I wanted to touch on today with you. Is, you know, we've had this opportunity. I probably take for granted all the stuff you've taught me over the years, but I think there's a growing amount of anglers now that really want to have a better understanding of how the fishery works and all the science behind it that creates this incredible fishery that we participate in each summer. So I think, yeah, you know, we got Vince here on board, and he might kind of offer another voice of, you know, you and I are so deep into so many aspects. Maybe he could simplify a few things, right, of where guys want, you know, just some common sense behind their answers. So
I'm here as the guy that says, why don't you explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old?
That's great. I like talking to 5-year-olds, so.
But you know what? Some of your stuff is pretty complex. I think it needs to be out there. Like, you know, it might be a bit over. It was over my head when we first started chatting about these things. But one of the biggest things I took away from starting these projects with you guys was bridging that gap between the science and the angling. Recreational. And I think when we first both met, and the rest of the team with Graham, and you know, there was maybe some indecisiveness of what each other knew or how we went about our things. I think there was a bit of a learning curve there.
Yeah, for both of us.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I don't know if you thought our experiences were warranted to help with science, and also we thought, well, you know, we're just out to catch them. So let's touch on a few of the advantages of these gaps that have been bridged that we both learned from each other with.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like walking into this, I always had the perception like you're out here on the water way more than I ever am, right? Like I might be interested in the fish and what they're doing and that sort of thing, like answer ecological questions or research questions, that sort of thing. But I know that I'm not here every day or every other day. And so I've kind of walked into it valuing sort of what anglers know already, whether or not it's like fish tails, like, you know, how we kind of talk about, oh, we caught this one that was like this big and it gets bigger every time we tell the story, but it's not always like that. And so I think from my scientific side of things, I'm like, okay, well, I kind of want to know how much it actually, like, how much it weighed, how much, like, what the actual length was, record this data, and not sort of have the fish tails aspect of it, but, and then, like, you can work with that, right? Like, so you see how I needed me a little bit more precise, but I can get more information out of it.
And yeah, just not to cut you off there, but you're right. Anglers, as I'm sure you've met many. Oh, we got another fish there. Excuse me.
We're going to have to take a quick commercial break here, everybody. Oh, boy.
Pardon the interruption there. Emily's dipsy rip turned into a double header, which needed all hands on board. So we got those two fish in, and the one you did surgery on. But we'll get into that in a second with the all the surgeries and stuff. But I just wanted to kind of touch on the anglers, sharing what they see. There is a great value in what they see throughout the summers. But I will, and touch on, and for me it was a learning curve. When I generalize what I see over summer, I understand that there is no scientific value there because it's not documented properly. You know, I might go out one day, see piles of something and say, that's it, the whole, we got all this.
Yeah, you remember that one day where you caught 20 fish or something amazing,
and that's exactly it. And anglers are a very proud group, so you'll never really hear about our tough days, and we often kind of put them behind us, forget about it. So we might go out one day, see piles of bait on the screen, and boom, catch all coho one day, and in our minds that's well, there's plenty of them in the water, but that's where you guys come in with the actual documentation and the years of accumulating this data to really have a better understanding opposed to what we see yearly.
Yeah, and it's just it's not to devalue anything that anglers have to say whatsoever, but it's just a matter of, documenting it in a way and not just being like, oh, this summer, like, I still will go to you and be like, oh, how's the fishing? And you'll let me know if, like, you've had a lot of bites or not or whatever, but it's different than, like, sort of documenting, oh, we actually caught 10 this trip, we caught 20 that trip. Things like that. I go at it at a different angle because I'm studying more the ecology of specific fish species, but I also think that the knowledge that we both bring together is quite valuable. So that's one of the reasons I still really enjoy working with you, other than you razzing me all the time and vice versa. So.
Well, I mean, yeah, but if you're on board the boat, that's just part of it, right? There's definitely lots of razzing and picking on each other because, it's long days out in the water.
Nobody's safe.
Yeah, Vince has got his fill as he's...
Except Emily, because she hasn't lost a single fish. She's good today.
Emily is doing good. And to be honest, I've met a lot of your colleagues throughout the years. And definitely everyone has a different approach on the fishery and a different vision. I've enjoyed Emily today because she asked a lot of questions. Yeah. And as just like you,
Reminds
I'm sure
me
you
of me.
Yes, you 8 years ago. But that's how it's progressed, right? You would ask the questions. I was happy to share them because it's a lot more interesting for us when people on board have an interest in what we're doing, opposed to just catch me a fish, dance
And
monkey.
I'm not trying to come in and be like, oh, you guys know nothing. Like, let the science show the way or whatever like that. I don't believe that either, right? Like, I think we both bring different sources of information to the table, and I think it's really cool how we can combine that and how we've made it work, like even just with the tagging of fish and stuff, where your knowledge of where the fish are on the day-to-day is helping us tag them, like catch them for my tagging purposes and get additional information, like where are these fish in the winter time. Like, we're able to get that information now.
And that's what I kind of wanted to touch on today, like, the introduction to it all, and bridging the gap, which I'm pretty excited. We got something in the works to help our whole angling community kind of contribute information to the science behind it that you guys are documenting. But let's talk on a few things. Maybe today, they might have saw us hook up there. So after we net the fish, maybe just a quick run of the procedure we go over just to perform the surgeries you're doing.
Or should we start off with what the purpose is in general? I could actually just show you one of the tags we got here.
You mean there's a purpose behind it? I thought we were just coming out fishing. No, okay, share
So
exactly what you're looking for, the information you're gathering from these fish.
all right, so right now we're tagging Lake Trout. I think, as Nick mentioned earlier, we're on his boat, the Silver Salmon, and we're putting these transmitter into the body cavities of Lake Trout. The Lake Trout are quite big, so it can easily fit this inside their bodies. And what it does is it sends a ping every 1 to 2 minutes, and we have receivers in the water that pick up this ping. And so as it swims past, you can kind of get an idea of where it's been because it picks up that ping. So we have these all throughout Lake Ontario now, even in the middle, like at over 200 meters depth, right? And so and those tags, those ones in particular, last 10 years. Some last less than that, like 3 years or something like that. But
and yeah, not to stop you, I remember some of the ones we worked with were tiny, like
Yeah.
little Mike Ikes. When you brought those out,
These were
they're
beasts,
huge.
yeah.
But it makes sense. You're getting a whole year of data. When I remember those were maybe only a month or so, right?
Yeah.
The tags used to be bigger.
No, that's
Oh.
the biggest ones. They used to be smaller, and I put them in
okay.
like the size of my pinky nail into like little Atlantic salmon smolts. So the size can vary, and then the battery life varies. But the idea is you can get the spatial movements of them, and now that we have an array in Lake Ontario, we can get really good data out of it now.
Can you visually see that?
Yes, yeah.
Where
I can
can
make
I
like a
access this?
video of where the trail of where a fish has been picked up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's some of the stuff our angling community would enjoy knowing. What these fish do, and especially if they know where they're all congregated at certain times of the year, it makes it easier to go target them. But yeah, so how many receivers ballpark are in Lake Ontario?
I'd probably say 400 to 500 now. Yeah, it started off in 2016. I think there was some in Hamilton, Toronto, and Niagara River, and now it's completely gridded across Lake Ontario. So it really opens the potential for new studies and to look at this stuff. So the lake trout, we're just trying to figure out their spawning grounds and if they differ from historic ones, and then to look at spawning success and things like that. But there's a whole slew of different questions, Dr. Sylvia Ivanova, she was doing her PhD at the same time as me at the University of Windsor, and she was looking at Chinook or king salmon and their movement patterns in the lake as well, but also when they're younger and how it changed as they grow older. So there's a bunch of different questions, and it all comes from that one little tag.
And that one little tag, I mean, that holds an abundance of information that definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, the west end of the Lake Ontario, we were over in Niagara tagging in Brawny. We're all along that south shore into Grimsby, but once you get to the north shore, up until about the cement plant just before Port Credit, you rarely catch lake trout. So it'll be interesting maybe if it's a certain time of year they're there, or maybe they don't even go there.
Yeah.
But I'm sure your tagging is going to answer those questions. Lake trout, I don't want to go too much onto them. I know there's a lot of efforts to stock the lake with lake trout, which aren't so heavily sought after by the angling community, as we've kind of put our focus around king salmon as such a hard fighting fish. But these lake trout, I mean, they're big, right?
Well, we caught an 18-pounder today.
Exactly, and I hear that. I've heard of many bigger ones. So the trolling technique isn't really the best for lake trout. But to have all this knowledge, and maybe we can apply different techniques to target them, just opens our fishery to that many more, a multi-species fishery, which can be enjoyed. Not everyone wants salmon, but if we got big lake trout anglers, your data will help them enjoy our fishery that much more.
Yeah, so I guess now I can walk you through the process. Now that you kind of understand one of the reasons why we're doing this here. And so what we'll typically do is we'll go out angling with Nick and his assistants and deckhands. And when we catch a fish, we put it into a cooler, and then we actually use these gloves. They emit electricity, so it's anesthesia. It's hard to say that one quick. Anyways, so my assistant today is Emily. She holds the fish down with the gloves, and then I can do the surgery. So it's kind of stunned, and so I'll do the surgery real quick, suture it up, and take a couple measurements, like its weight and length, and off it's on its way. So you can see, like, we have the water pumping through its gills and stuff. You can see they're just like, it's still pumping all nice. Like, we try to do a very safe surgery, everything's sterilized and whatnot, because we want information, but we also put the welfare of the fish above everything else. So as you've seen.
No, of course, and sometimes we take a different approach, especially if the fish are going to consumption. But yeah, you guys, it was somewhat impressive because, obviously the tags have value. So you want to make sure that fish is well taken care of for its release, which has been interesting today with the lake trout. A couple of those lake trout came up with, what's the terminology?
I called it barotrauma.
Barotrauma.
Yeah, so when it comes up from deep too quickly, its swim bladder kind of expands. Kind of like if you're scuba diving, you can get the bends almost, right? Get little air bubbles in your bloodstream. So in this case, it's their swim bladder. So it just makes them kind of like a cork, and they can't right themselves. So. Yeah.
No, and when we're fishing on the South Shore, a lot of our lake trout were up around. We were getting them in the 50-foot range, but now down 120. We're seeing it, and we've overcome it with a few different techniques to get them down there and get them swimming away. Is that anything else you want to kind of touch on the surgery side of things there? I mean, I think you covered it from what we see every day. I remember from when you first started, your process is extremely quick and fluid now. So it's fun watching you work, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the only thing I wanted to add is we kind of create challenges for you, right? With Sylvia's work, we're looking for shakers, so the little tiny Chinook. And then I'm like, oh, get us a coho, get us some browns, get us anything other than kings. So we kind of create a challenge for you to help us out, but it's been fun.
To be honest, I think that's what makes us enjoy it, is a challenge, right? Anglers, there's a big sense of reward when they're getting their fish. So, give them something to cover, and they do that. It's rewarding. And then, Sylvia, it'd be great for us to talk to Sylvia too. But yeah, I remember when, I guess it was a few summers back, her size range was very precise. And I was scratching my head thinking,
it was hard to get them.
Yeah, that was a second-year salmon within a 2-inch kind of size frame we had to get, but we ended up getting into them pretty good. Once we dialed in that that program, they were sitting up a little higher than the others, but we got through it, and those tags got out, and the data got back in, right? So no, I think honestly that we enjoy that. So keep throwing it at us. Maybe one day you want to get sturgeon out here. Maybe 1 or 2
keep
a year is all I can
you.
promise. But yeah, that would be a fun side of it. telemetry. So that's kind of your focus. I remember Graham was the pop-off tags, which could be a whole nother topic of temperatures and depths those fish were sitting at, right?
Yeah, so some of these tags, they have depth sensors in them, or they could have temperature, but the tags that Graham was using, they collected data at a much higher rate. So you could get, and it collected it continuously, so you didn't have to be near a receiver to get the information, to like ping at a receiver in the lake. So when we had fewer receivers out here, these tags are just continuously picking up like the depth and temperature data, but then they pop off. So they were externally attached to the back of the fish by the dorsal fin, and after a set length of time, they're programmed to sort of like pop off and float to the surface, and then you rely on beach combers to find them along the beach. So they'd be this like neon orange little sticks. Someone picks it up, says, a reward, you call it in, he gets the data back. So again, it was a different way of working with the community, a different kind of community, in this case the beachcombers, or if maybe an angler if they caught one as well, but it's still working with citizens and other people that are interested in it to like get data.
The community, getting the community involved. Again, they're not angling community, but they're outdoorsers along the shoreline. And, I got to reach out to Graham to see if he wants to touch on it, but, that was some of my first stages of applying your sciences to our fishing. So I won't go too much into that, but, I'm not a very big temp-oriented angler. A lot of guys run temp probes and whatnot. I've always kind of let my own intuition lead to me for my depths and stuff. And after Graham's papers came out, I really realized
Maybe you're missing something.
No, the complete opposite. No, honestly, from the temperatures
indicated,
and maybe again that's my sense of pride that's taking that direction. But the actual amount of times that these tags recorded the fish's temperatures he sat in was very far off of a lot of anglers' approach of where they're targeting. So yes, those fish were in those temperatures, and it might have been for their feeds, but they were out of it more than they were in it. Gotcha. I'm going to leave that honestly to Graham, because he might come back over top and say, no, you need to run temp probes. But we've got by without him. But that was kind of my first. He showed me some studies, and I went, aha! I thought I was onto something there. And again, right or wrong, everyone has their program, but that was really eye-opening for me to see another side of it. Yeah.
And one thing too, I understand like some of these papers, like especially a scientific paper, it's very hard for like the layperson, like a regular Joe, to understand what's going on. There's like stats in there. They're like, it might not be the easiest thing to read and then understand, okay, what does that actually mean? But then, so I think it's of value for people like myself to like try to explain the science in a way that anyone can understand, right? Not just like throw some stats lingo at you guys. Oh, my GAMs showed this, and like my GLMMs. Oh, you should have seen the significance on it.
And I think that's why we appreciate. And maybe that's come over our relationship of being able to simplify it like that. But
it helps me better communicate it. Yeah.
I agree, and I think it helps the angling community get a better understanding. As it's a bit get turned off when you can't follow along with it, right?
Yeah.
I appreciate you kind of getting into that. I'm kind of curious what led you into this line of work. I can see you enjoy being outdoors.
Yeah.
I don't think I would consider you a great angler when we first met. I think maybe.
I've never been downrigging before.
No, I agree. But it's totally different now. Now I love it. Even when we have people come out on board and you're here, you can help exactly what we've always said over the years. So no, I definitely see that. But kind of what's your passions and drive behind, this type of work, or even, your professional life now?
Well, I've always, even from a young age, just, loved being around the water. I grew up in Sault Ste. Marie, so it's just, I don't know, I feel like it was in my blood. even when I was young, like my parents didn't really go angling, but I like showed interest in it. So like I remember going down to Florida with my dad, and he took me out fishing because he knew I wanted to, right? So it's always been there. And then I went to university at the University of Guelph for marine and freshwater biology. And then I got random stints, like I worked with Fisheries and Oceans Canada, where I am now, but I was a summer student there through an FSWEP program. And I got to go out, not angling, but I got to go boat electrofishing or backpack electrofishing, all these different methods of surveying fish. And it was just like, yeah, I was like, I knew I'm in the right spot.
And I mean, the more people I've met through your colleagues in different programs, it's not an easy line of work to get into, no matter how much studying, how much schooling you do. There's only so much job opportunity, right? Was that tough?
Yeah.
Tough challenge for you? I mean, obviously where you landed now is incredible, but was the process tough?
I think it, like, as much as I hated the word serendipitous, sometimes it feels like things just kind of like your path might be crooked, but you kind of end up getting there anyways. So like I worked in consulting for a bit. I was out in Vancouver, I was out in Calgary, I was out in the East Coast, like, but all sort of fish related, right? So I was a fisheries biologist in a lot of these places, but working on different things like mining or oil and gas, and now I gotta be back onto the lakes. So I always sort of find my way back home to Ontario.
Really? Okay. I didn't know you got into those. Yeah, I guess perseverance pays off, and I think I've seen even some of my deckhands work with me. They pursued it until they realized they couldn't, and they just changed career paths. But that's very good for you, because there's something to be said for a professional life around your passions, right?
Yeah, and I always have a thing for aquatic conservation and like just having healthy, sustainable fish populations and stuff like that. So I think that's where my real jam is, and I love learning about like the spatial movement stuff of it. And like I was doing some like food web stuff too with the stable isotope analysis. That's more scientific mumbo jumbo, but is really cool stuff to sort of look at the food web changes in Lake Ontario and everything. But that's where like I like putting that stuff all together. Yeah.
Yeah, isotopes. I think I used to throw that word around a lot when I was mentioned to colleagues and friends that I was out here doing that with you guys, because I kind of felt like I sounded like a scientist with that word. But yeah, no, it sounds like having you on board it really shares or takes after all our angling community's best interests, right? So I hope people can kind of at least take from this the passions behind making sure this fishery is what it is, right? And the
like
amount of efforts.
Our underlying sort of values really align, right? Like it's just, I'm not pitted against you. I'm not trying to stop anything or start something different, but it's just we want to make sure healthy fish populations are out there. So
no, you're right, and if you guys could pick up on things before they happen with declining and bait fish or any things like those that you could preemptively plan around, I think that's important, right? Because for many years we just kind of went through it catching fish, and not everyone put much thought into the behind the scenes. But I mean, how many fish are you guys tagging this year? The lake trout?
Oh, lake trout this one's across different agencies, so it's both on the American side and the Canadian side. It's a big collaborative agreement or project. At least 400, I think. 450 might be the total.
Wow, that's the biggest one I've heard of so far, right? For a project?
Yeah, it's a huge project, and it's really cool to get both like U.S. and Canadian, like both federal and provincial and state and whatever agencies working together. So not only is it like, are we working with the angling community, but we're also working amongst ourselves too. So
no, we're
trying to get better at it.
No, it's great. Yeah, we all share the lake, right? And at least now you guys could travel around a bit. I know you have some colleagues down the U.S. side, which through COVID obviously shut all that down. So yeah, no, this is an exciting big project, and we're excited to be part of it. But anything we could contribute back to helping improve this fishery is always exciting, and we appreciate the call on that. Is there anything maybe outside of this, what we're doing today, that I don't know, not to get too off topic, but you know, go ahead. You got anything?
Oh, oh, geez, put me on the
I'd
spot.
like to know actually.
Sure, Vince, come on, take it away.
Yeah, I'd like to know why you chose angling over like a gill net or something like that. I know that they are doing that over on like the east side of the lake. You were mentioning that as well. But, you know, I see some ideas of why maybe, but it'd be best for you to, I think, to describe it.
Sure, yeah, I think like it all depends. Like in my building right now, like our group isn't super well fitted for gill netting. We don't have a major gill netting program in my lab specifically. And so logistically, it actually just made the most sense to go with like Nick and like go through like charters, right? And that's just on a bare bones thing. But yeah, I think it's fewer people that we have to bring out, but it's also like about the fish welfare too. Like sometimes we got, for the gill netting, it's usually overnight sets. They use smaller mesh size so that the lake trout get into it. They just like get toothed on it, and they might like spin a bit, but it's so as to try to reduce as much harm to them as possible. So there's like pros and cons to it all, but in the end, like with Nick, like we can just go out when the weather's nice. Like say you set a gill net and then a storm comes, you can't pull it the next day. You could have, yeah. But it's not to say that gill netting is bad either. It's just it works out so much easier for us. Like you need fewer people, fewer hours out on the water, I think, in terms of like numbers of fish being captured. And yeah, it just worked better for us. But
And honestly, just getting a bite there. Emily, you want to grab that rod there? And you didn't really admit it or say it there, but it's fun, no? It's fun reeling these fish in, you know? Vince, you want to give Emily a hand there? I just get to polish off on this. It is
wish I
it's
could
exciting.
pan the camera over.
But also, with your other colleagues, you know, they're more of the science. Now they get to participate, and we get to share some of the excitement behind angling.
Oh, I love showing people that haven't gone out angling, and like I just love introducing them to it because it's super fun.
It is, and honestly, I mean, I always go with not everyone's family introduced to them. Not everyone had a grandfather or someone introduced them to fishing. So, you know, some strayed and found it themselves, but many that have never been able to participate in it see it, and they're like, wow.
And the size of these fish, holy moly, you don't even gotten into that, but like, it's like some of the biggest fish I'd seen. But like, I don't know, it's just really fun.
No, you've come numb to it now, but
please, I still jump up to go get the
I'm
fish.
just gonna net this fish. Excuse me, Sarah. What is that? It might be an Atlantic.
No, we got a unicorn. We got a unicorn. Oh, Emily, hold on.
Again, pardon the interruption. Emily had it under control until Vince yelled out it's an Atlantic. So just to get you guys familiar, when Sarah and I first started working together or helping Sarah, Atlantics were kind of the top species we're after, right?
Yeah, we kind of knew it would be very difficult, but it was always the dream of dreams because my PhD kind of revolved around Atlantic salmon, but I was always interested in the salmonid community, so I wanted to tag other species, but I always left one spot open for an Atlantic, but we never got it until now.
It only took us 8 years, right? So not to say we haven't caught some in between, but yeah, I know it's tough to pinpoint those fish. And actually, just on the Atlantic side of it, that one project you did with the West End anglers too, right? Trying to collect isotopes.
Yeah. I asked a lot of charters, including yourself, to help me collect fin clips of Atlantic. So knowing that it's very rare for me to be out here and actually catch one, but since anglers like yourself are out here on the water all the time, right? So I asked yourself and others, including on the New York side, I got probably about a good 20 anglers involved with this to help me collect Atlantic salmon fin clips and fin clips of other salmonids too. So it was actually like very helpful, and I think I got like 40 or 50 fin clips for the one summer, and that was the most, like the largest sample of them that they had ever seen. So it was a good sample size. It was great.
Definitely, and those are all, you know, I wouldn't say wild, but at least out in their natural elements, opposed to a lot of your other research was through the hatcheries. So,
yeah.
Well, we did it. That was awesome. That was, yeah, a bit nerve-wracking. Obviously, any good fish goes into the dipsy into another line.
I wasn't concerned.
You weren't? No, but and he was pretty big. I'd put him at about 8 or 9, right? So that's one of the biggest we've seen in a long time.
I think, what, 27 inches, something like that?
You know, not many of the angling communities much up on the Atlantics, as you know, everyone wants the big kings, but I'm a big believer in multi-species fishery, right?
They're all sexy fish.
Yeah. Those Atlantics, they do have a look to them, and that spot configuration is pretty neat looking. Well, I don't know, is it, you know, Vince, do you have anything to add on this? I know you're sitting from a side. You might have some other questions.
I mean, I'm sitting on a throne at this point after bringing that Atlantic in for you. I say we end on a high note.
I'm happy with that.
Well, that was good, and hopefully the wind here doesn't ruin anything with the sound. It kind of picked up a bit, but yeah, out here on the Rod Wrestler, which is Silver Salmon's Custom Express, and we'll be doing a few more shoots out in here because I think it went pretty well, eh?
That was fantastic.
Well, if it gets us more Atlantics, I'm on board.
Let's hope so. All right, Sarah. Well, thanks for doing this. This is great.
Thanks
so
for
much.
inviting me.